Using humor in B2B email outreach. Does it work? Humor in cold outreach, a tool, not a personality. Most inboxes are packed with the same stiff, just circling back language, and prospects have learned to ignore it on autopilot. That's why more teams are testing humor in B2B email outreach. Not to be comedians, but to earn a few extra seconds of real attention. Done well, humor can create a clean pattern interrupt that makes your message feel human instead of automated. The catch is that humor is high variance. One light, relevant line can pull a prospect into the value prop, and one poorly judged joke can trigger spam complaints or damage credibility. In our outbound work at SalesHive, we treat humor like a controlled variable, something you deploy with guardrails, not something each rep improvises. This matters whether you run outbound in-house or through sales outsourcing with an outsourced sales team that needs consistent quality at scale. In practice, humor works best when it's tightly connected to business pain and followed immediately by a clear ask. If the joke doesn't make the offer clearer, it doesn't belong in the email. The goal is simple: get the open, earn the read, and make the next step obvious. Why humor can lift opens, replies, and trust. Email remains a primary outbound lever for SDR teams and sales development agency programs because it scales efficiently and creates consistent at-bats. In 2025 benchmarks, 44% of B2B marketers ranked email as their #1 lead generation channel, with average open rates around 18% and CTRs commonly in the 2 to 5% range. When baseline metrics are tight, even a small lift from a better subject line or opener shows up quickly in pipeline. Humor's biggest advantage is that it breaks pattern without requiring extra words. Several studies suggest 35 to 47% of people decide to open based on the subject line alone, so a light twist can be the difference between deleted and read. Experience analysis, as cited in outbound subject line research, has also been associated with humorous subject lines producing a 33% higher open rate than non-humorous variants. Beyond clicks, humor can also improve how your brand feels. A 2024 Edelman-based report cited in Marketing Analysis found 73% of consumers perceive brands using appropriate humor as more authentic and trustworthy, useful in B2B where prospects assume cold outreach is robotic. That human signal is especially valuable for a cold email agency or outbound sales agency trying to earn replies without leaning on gimmicks. Use humor as a pattern interrupt, then pivot to value. The most effective humor in B2B is short, work-relevant, and immediately followed by a concrete business outcome. Think of it as the hook, not the whole show. One line to snap someone out of inbox autopilot, then a clean value statement that ties to a real pain. No-shows, reporting chaos, messy routing, forecast whiplash. If the humor doesn't reinforce the pain you solve, it becomes a distraction instead of an accelerator. We recommend anchoring humor to the prospect's lived reality, not your team's inside jokes. Random memes and pop culture references often miss because they're not universal and they don't map to the buyer's day. A VP behind on pipeline doesn't need clever, they need relevant, which is why the best funny lines still sound like business. Clarity wins the meeting. Keep the CTA literal. Avoid hiding the ask inside the joke, because a prospect shouldn't have to decode what you want. This is true whether your team is internal, an SDR agency, or part of a broader B2B sales agency motion that also includes cold calling services and LinkedIn outreach services, where humor performs best in a real sequence. If you're going to experiment, start in the safest, highest leverage spots. Subject lines, the first 1 or 2 sentences, and the PS line. Subject lines are short, easily A/B tested, and easy for the reader to ignore if it doesn't land. That matters because you want upside without risking deliverability or trust early in the relationship. In our SalesHive testing, Well-executed humor has driven 18 to 34% higher open rates and 22% more meeting bookings when paired with strong targeting and personalization. Humor-optimized templates have also outperformed formal equivalents with 41% higher reply rates and 63% lower unsubscribe rates, which is the real win: more positive engagement with less list fatigue. That combination is exactly what outbound teams want when they're scaling volume through sales outsourcing or adding an outsourced sales team to increase capacity. Timing matters too. Humor often performs best in follow-ups, commonly touches 3 through 5, re-engagement messages, and breakup emails, where a touch of self-awareness can feel refreshing. The first email should earn credibility. Later touches can earn a smile while staying focused on the business case. Humor should buy attention for your value, not replace it. Operationalize humor with guardrails and a snippet library. Humor scales when it's systematized, not when it's improvised. The fastest way to reduce risk is to define where humor is allowed and where it's restricted, by industry, geography, seniority, and deal size, so SDRs aren't guessing joke by joke. This is especially important for regulated verticals and executive personas where the volume of humor should be low or off entirely. Next, centralize approved humor snippets inside your sales engagement platform. Instead of letting every rep freestyle, build a small library of tested subject lines, openers, and PS lines, then tag them by persona: manager versus VP versus C-suite, and segment: startup versus enterprise. That process is how a sales development agency keeps tone consistent across multiple SDRs, and it's how a cold email agency avoids brand drift over time. Finally, add a simple humor review step to sequence QA. A manager or enablement lead should scan new or updated sequences for cultural references, ambiguous CTAs, or anything that could be read as sarcastic or personal. This quick check catches most problems before they become deliverability issues, or worse, a screenshot that circulates inside the prospect's company. Common ways humor backfires and how to prevent it. The most common failure mode is edgy or sarcastic humor from a stranger. In cold outreach, the prospect doesn't know your intent, so sarcasm reads like disrespect and edgy reads like risk. Keep humor light, positive, and work-related. Self-deprecating beats targeted, and universal beats niche. Another mistake is using humor that has nothing to do with the prospect's world. If your joke doesn't map to a workflow pain, missed SLAs, broken dashboards, QBR chaos, pipeline gaps, it feels juvenile and off-brand. The fix is straightforward. Make the humor prove relevance by tying it directly to an operational problem your product or service can improve. The third mistake is being clever in the CTA instead of being clear. A joke can live in the subject line or opener, but the ask should be brutally simple. For example, a specific 15-minute time window. If humor increases opens but spikes unsubscribes or spam complaints, it's not helping, especially when deliverability is already fragile and benchmarks show bounce rates around 8% in many B2B programs. Testing and optimization. Treat humor like any other variable. Humor should earn its place through testing, not opinions. Run a clean A/B test where the only change is the subject line or first sentence. Everything else stays identical. Then evaluate opens, replies, positive replies, unsubscribes, and spam complaints across a meaningful sample. If you can't measure it, you can't scale it safely. Instrument your reporting so you can compare humorous sequences against serious controls over time. Tag templates or sequences that use humor and review performance weekly, paying special attention to unsubscribe rate and complaint signals. Many teams use internal guardrails, such as dialing back humor when unsubscribes rise above 0.8% or when response rates dip under 5%, to ensure short-term creativity doesn't create long-term deliverability debt. Be cautious with visual humor in cold outreach. Images, memes, and GIFs can introduce deliverability and rendering issues, and they often don't outperform clean, plain text when the list is truly cold. If you want to test them, do it in warmer touches or segmented campaigns, and always keep a plain text variant as your control. Next steps: a practical rollout plan for SDR teams. Start small and controlled. Choose one high-volume sequence, add a light humorous subject line variant, and keep the body copy identical so you can attribute lift correctly. With typical B2B open rates often landing in the 22 to 28% range, a few points of improvement is meaningful because it creates more replies and more conversations without changing headcount. Then build repeatability. Define your humor tiers: playful for certain operator roles, restrained for executives, off for regulated industries. Document do not touch topics and train SDRs on one line max before pivoting to value. This is the same operational discipline we apply across multi-channel outbound programs that may include B2B cold calling services, cold call services, and list building services alongside email. Whether you hire SDRs internally or partner with an SDR agency, consistent governance is what keeps performance stable as volume grows. Finally, decide what you want your brand to sound like and let humor support it rather than define it. A professional tone with a quick human moment tends to outperform a sequence that tries to be funny in every touch. If you keep humor relevant, tested, and clearly subordinate to your value proposition, it stops being risky and starts becoming a scalable advantage.